And now we have new medicines, we have new tools available. And so what is AI doing? AI is bringing down cost, increasing speed, increasing customization. In a way, you could say these are all three things happening in medicine as well. And increasing creativity. You can think about new solutions that you couldn't really think about that before. So what does that do? That all takes off what I would call potentially of a person's role, some of their C work, some of the low skill, soul crushing, monotonous stuff. It at least moves them up to their B work, where it's a little higher skill. Maybe they would need to delegate. Maybe they do need more training, but it's coming for that B work as well if it's not already there. What does that leave? It leaves that person's A work. What's the highest value of that person in their role? Where do they deliver the most value to the team, to the enterprise, to the customer, in this case, the learner? And so that is one framework to think about it. Let's find where the pain is. Let's remove the pain. Let's free people up from their C and B work so that they can really be giving sort of their maximum value contribution.
If AI feels overwhelming, you're not behind. You're just busy running a business. New tools pop up every week, and then no one has time to figure out what actually works. At LionEdge AI, we take AI off your plate so you can focus on running your business. We review your setup, choose the right tools, and run AI systems across sales, customer support, and operations. No noise, no learning curve. LionEdge AI, your unfair advantage in the AI era.
Imagine a world where AI isn't just a tool, but a partner in education, reshaping how we learn and grow. Our guest today, Jacob Grishcom, is at the forefront of this transformation, blending ancient wisdom with cutting-edge technology to redefine what education can be. From debating with AI to creating new educational framework, Jacob's journey is a fascinating blend of history and innovation. Curious about how AI could make summer break obsolete? Let's dive in and explore the future of learning together. And before we start, actually, Jacob, why don't you introduce yourself and the company? Because if I'm going to try to do it, I'm probably going to do a disservice for you. You would do it much better than I do.
Yeah, well, sure. Well, since we kind of stumbled over the last name, that's up for me right now as an interesting thing to explore. The name Griscom came from the British. So some family line that I had goes all the way back to England. And, America, in a way, you can kind of think is like a fork of the British system. If you were thinking about it like a technology terms, if you fork software, well, America's kind of a fork of the British experiment that became its own new thing. But it took a lot of that code base, and then it began the American experiment. And my ancestors back then were part of that very early on experiment. They came over in the 1600s. And there's actually in my family, I still possess a family tree that's about probably about 7 feet tall by 7 feet wide, something like that. And it follows the family tree back from these British that came in the 1600s all the way down through to somewhere in the late 1800s is where that cuts off. And some things I found that were kind of interesting about that. One was that there were a lot of actually fairly well-known influential people along that track. One of whom was that probably most people will know. Her name was Elizabeth Griscom, and she married Henry Ross, and she became Betsy Ross. So Betsy Ross was the original sort of senior designer of the American flag, at least that version of it at the time.
Oh.
And there's still the Betsy Ross house there in Philadelphia. So these Griscoms came, were part of this sort of forking of the code to the American experiment. And that's followed all the way through a lot of interesting characters along the line, such that my father's name was Harry Franklin Griscom III. But he was actually the fourth So
Griscom.
there was a Harry Franklin Griscom, ding, 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 ding. But one of the Harry Franklin Griscoms at the beginning, he had died really young, and the junior, instead of becoming the second, just became the new Harry Franklin Griscom. And then there was like a second, and then my dad was a third. And in lieu of calling me Harry Franklin Griscom the fourth, like some strange line of kings or something like that, they opted to just call me Jacob Perry Griscom, Perry meaning son of Harry, and call it there. But the connection to that interesting line there is that I feel that I'm now involved in yet another fork of the American experiment and where it's going next. And so, isn't that interesting? That there's this line, and maybe there's some elements that get carried through our DNA, various things like that we're not really quite the choosers of, but we discover that that is in fact part of our life and part of what we've been given. And so here I am now at the network school outside in Forest City, a man-made island outside of Singapore. And I'm participating in Balaji Srinivasan's experiment to build new countries. And
Wow.
part of the idea is that, well, America, as it's kind of being torn in at least two, it's kind of one country, two nations right now, is that the best parts of the American experiment, the freedom, the equality, the opportunity, the pioneering spirit, like the frontier attitude, is continuing on, but maybe it's not going to continue on to the same degree in that same geography. Maybe part of that is going to get passed on like a fork to the open internet. And we'll end up with these kind of four factions vying for control of the next age here. You've got Blue America, Red America, CCP China, and the internet, all with attack vectors against each other, all with their own ways that they're attacking each other. And so probably I side the most with the internet out of those four right now as the most optimistic force for building the future. Obviously, we're going to talk a little bit about AI. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about crypto. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about internet communities that can then start in the cloud and then descend to the land as actual new country startups. Kind of the third big thing, right? We had internet companies that were a big thing in the 90s that emerged. Then from 2008, after that big print in 2008 and the banks bailed out, we had internet currencies were born. And now maybe internet communities, internet countries are a new thing that will really help to meet the needs of our time and place. But
Well,
those are some
okay.
interesting ideas, and maybe that's a good introduction for now.
Well, that's what is. I hope my audience now understand why I said that this conversation can go a thousand direction. Otherwise, if we won't stick to few, then we can go uh 10 hours. And we actually almost did that last time. I mean, we had a very interesting conversation before the call. So, you know, when I got to learn about you, you wear many hats. And some of the things that you are uh, involved right now, and you already gave us few hints, are um, topics or initiatives that I wouldn't call them mainstream, other than let's say the crypto, but it still need explanation to people who are not aware of that, and I'm one of them. I remember in our first conversation, I learned a lot from you about things that I didn't even realize exist. So before we jump into those more advanced topics, let's go back for a second to schools in America.
Yeah,
All right, which you know very well
I've been to
because
them. Yeah,
well, that's one.
through them, and I've worked with them, and like that.
So you know what? Do you want to talk a little bit about the communities that the school communities that you guys are managing and helping them?
Yeah, but maybe I'll kind of frame it within how I think about education, and then let's talk about kind of where we are in the education moment right now, and maybe where we
Yeah.
could go from here. What are the possibilities?
You know what? So I have an idea. Let's do this. You have a lot of experience, working with charter schools, right, and schools, and you know some of the inside.
Hmm.
So I definitely want to hear your feedback about what do you think, where are we? Because I think we are in a very interesting junction right now where, and it, by the way, because of AI, one of the reasons, not the only reason, but maybe the biggest catalyst or maybe the biggest force that gonna uh, a force that might get schools to change their course or the way that they teach kids if they want to survive, right? In what's coming. So then we can talk about, what do you see how AI can change it or how they can adapt and adopt, right? AI to be successful and thrive.
Yeah.
Um, so if you want to say a few words about, the company and your role there, then, and of course, I want to hear your opinion about what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'll nest the company within a sort of a bigger framework where just like that's like we were talking about that maybe America is like a fork of that British code base. Well, then
Yeah.
if we took a step further back, we could say that that ultimately had some connection to Rome, and that ultimately
Hmm.
had some connection to Greece. And we can kind of trace, like my son Ethan, he's going to be 23 here. He's a graduate of St. John's College out of the Santa Fe campus there. St. John's, the original campus out of Annapolis, Maryland, is I think like the fourth oldest college in the country. And it's what's called a classical liberal arts college. So what they do is they study all of the great books of the Western, canon, Western civilization, and they treat the authors as their teachers, and they're involved in like a Socratic discussion format. So they learn how to read, they learn how to write, they learn how to explore and debate ideas and develop ideas and like that. So if we look back and we say, okay, well, what did Greece offer? It offered this exploration of education as a way to really kind of develop and explore the human being. Rome started to add a layer of building in like layers of bureaucracy and leadership to that. The British, of course, had different needs for their time. They needed to develop it along different tracks, and they had a huge empire to run, and so they needed a lot of different skill sets and as well as that leadership. And then the American experiment, occurring along with the industrialization of civilization, needed really kind of something different. They need everybody to be competent and to have certain skills across the board. They need like mass level playing field education where people could just slot right in to like pieces of the machine. And and to some degree we're still kind of running that model. That has been like I grew up in the 80s, that was certainly the model there. Sometime in like the 90s, I don't remember exactly where it was, but I think it was over in Michigan or Minnesota. This new experiment came about where they said like, okay, well, we have just all district public education. This idea came about of like a charter school. And the purpose of a charter school, the spirit of it was, could we be a little more experimental with how we're delivering this education? And in exchange, they would take on more accountability. So they're still going to get to use public funds. They got to be more experimental. And then there would be some accountability. And that California obviously adopted that. And California has the most charter schools of any state in the country. We have something like 1,300 charter schools in California, represents about 10% of the total public school population. And that trade-off is certainly there as well. There's a lot of different experience things they can mess with. However, they're still messing with it within the constraints of state-funded education, which is still basically constrained by this industrial model. So even though like my kids went to a Waldorf inspired charter school, and there's like Montessori and there's like STEM based and there's ones that focus more on CTE, a lot of things are also still pretty confined by these state standards and the bureaucracy that hangs over that. And of course, what we've seen in terms of a trend is that as with a lot of things that the government touches, the costs go up, 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 but the results aren't going up, 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 up. The results are going down and to the right. And that, unfortunately, you see that kind of consistently depending on the type of governance that's in effect. Sometimes government can invest in things, and it's certainly while an empire is like ascending, things can all go up. But as an empire peaks and starts to descend, and there's a lot more sort of raiding of the coffers, then you spend a lot more, but results go down, and the business model switches over to more failure, more funding. The worse you do, the more money you get. And so that's interesting. It's kind of a misaligned incentive, but it is where we find ourselves, and we just kind of have to look at it and stare it in the face and call it what it is, see it as it is. So the best performing state school in the country right now is out of Texas. It's a private school called Alpha Schools, and their model is really unique. And it's the first public charter following that model got approved, and they've just started their school year in August of last year. That's called Unbound Academy in Arizona. But we don't have anything. We have now Alpha is kind of franchised, and we have private Alpha schools running in California now as well. And of course, with a private school, the people coming into it already have some more resources, some more advantages because they're paying somewhere from 10 to 40K for tuition each year. Meanwhile, in California, it's costing on the public dollar 25, 26K per student. So if that were given to families directly, for example, they would easily be able to afford this tuition and they could do that. But we don't have that. There's a lot of state bureaucracy, there's labor interests that are more concerned in protecting jobs and protecting, retirements than they are truly concerned in student outcomes. So unfortunate. It's not because these are bad people, but they're following misaligned incentives. And so they will, they will get sort of corrupt themselves in that process and then need to tell them stories on top of themselves that the good things are actually still happening. And so you see a lot of political opposition to charters. Why? Because they're at least running a model that's a little bit more effective. And so just like if it were a competitive marketplace within the private sector, it's the same in the public, and families exit, district schools where their kid either isn't safe or isn't getting the right type of education or whatever into these other opportunities. And so the, you know, the politicians in California, obviously it being a one-party state, they're consistently um, against these experiments that disrupt the machine that funnel these things out. So charters are always against oppositional legislation, and still they're growing, and still people are exiting into them. So if you're in an oppositional environment and you're still growing and people are still getting better results with you, that's all very interesting. So Alpha Schools, what's its model, and why is it the best performing school in the country, at least based on standards, but I would say also based on the experience the students are having. So first off, what do? They have no teachers. AI is the teacher. And AI is entirely personalized to each student, and they basically speed run K-12 education for 2 hours per day. It's personalized, it's based around the topics that they're interested in their life, and it can quickly find the bottlenecks around why they're not learning effectively and adjust accordingly to those. So it can shift according to the student's learning style and topics of interest. So a lot of times, you remember in school, you'd be like, where am I ever going to use this? So AI is addressing that question in the education. And then somebody in the class learns really well visually or auditorily or kinesthetic, but the teacher is only presenting it in one format. And so some are really getting something from it and some aren't. And so those are pieces. The other thing I would say is that there could be a reexamination of the core concept of education being compulsory. Do we need that anymore? Because learning is kind of a natural human desire, quality. We have that built within us. If our first experience of learning is it's compulsory, you have to be there. You may or may not fit in socially and so on, and how that goes. If it's a negative experience, it's like right away, the first encounter is, oh, learning sucks. And obviously like that shouldn't be the case. Another thing we do is we just group people together simply because they're in the same geography and the same age. Does that make sense anymore? Or could we have the possibility to align people more by interest and aptitude? and have that be a sort of more of a natural formation, the same way that people find each other later in life. What are you into? Oh, I'm into that too. What age are you? Doesn't really matter. We're into the same thing. So these are like some directional changes I'm bullish on. AI enabling a much deeper level of personalization for people to learn whatever they need. Now, the standards are important because it's part of our sort of cultural level, like lower left shared reality. Being able to speak the same language, being able to read, being able to write. These are the ways that we kind of code some level of we-ness, of togetherness. So some level of that's important. Some math, some the basics, obviously. But do you need to use that many years of somebody's life? Do you need to sort of grind them through this and grind them down in the process so that at the end they've actually lost creativity? At the end, they've actually layers have been put on top rather than uncovered. So those are some thoughts on it. Those are where I feel like AI can really inject and be useful. And then those are some models that are interesting. Now, the outcomes at the alpha schools, I think, are actually even more impressive than them performing so well on the standards. Is that the rest of the day, that other 4 or 6 hours now, are now available for the humans in their life to play the role of guide and like coach and like motivator, helping them to
Yeah.
establish great habits, helping them to learn life skills, helping them to build businesses and projects that are very interested to them. So these kids are starting Airbnb businesses together. They're starting restaurants together. They're building applications together. They're exploring terrain of interest to the
Very.
degree that they petitioned their school to eliminate summer break.
Wow.
So now they don't have summer break. Now they're year round,
Wow.
and that was driven by the students. Now I can relate to that because there are things I'm really into that if an imposed summer break was on me, I was like, wait, what are you talking about? And so
I'm
they're
not
in
sure
that
the
same.
teacher. Well, I'm not sure how much the teacher likes that because they want their
They
break.
like
But
it too because, again, the teacher in the public system, it's a grind for them too. They're having to enforce, they're having to deal with people that don't want to be there in a system that is just sort of top down and built again to kind of, it's not, it wasn't because it was meant to be a bad thing, but it was intended to kind of grind people into machine behavior. And you know, that's not the place. Let's kind of argue for that there could be better possibilities for how people could thrive.
so, okay, this was fascinating, and it makes me think about so many options that can be done. But if I'm trying to summarize in one sentence, and I'm probably not doing a big a favor here, but i- if I understand you, I think what you're saying, one of the big benefit that we can see of injecting or embedding AI technology, which we know there's a lot of tools, and that's what I want to talk with you about. But
Hmm.
as a part of a natural component inside the school system, would be so that it's not the old school, hey, we are living in the same area, then that's why we're here. And the teacher can only use one modality to present the data, but I'm a visual learner and you are reading books learner, and this guy needs help, from someone to teach you the one-on-one, right? But hey, the system is okay. We all live in the same neighborhood. We all need to be together. We all need to learn at the same where we know today, and there's a lot of research shows that you know people have different. People can be successful if they would be given, had they been given, the right path to learn. And what's happening, I think, today is that you see kids that maybe weren't as good at school, right? But then they are thriving in the civilized or post school, or at least the post high school, let's say, because maybe then in the higher education there's more possibilities, but they are now thriving because they did find what works for them, where the system today cannot provide this to them, right? Because the system only is a one-dimensional, same old process that my grandparent, seriously, right? Our grandparents used, right? And I think what you're saying that AI and I want and if you can give us examples of how do you vision this, because you're a very visionary person. How do you vision AI help to okay? So I have the okay. I'm sorry. So here's what um, I'm gonna describe you a scenario, and you take it from there. The facility of the school itself, the physical facility is there. All right. Right now, it's very hard to change it. Like our society is built on the fact that in the morning the kids go to this facility, right, and spend 10 hours, 12 hours sometimes, during the day, sports, education, social activities, all of that, right? However, so that's a given. And let's say that cannot be changed quickly because there's a lot of things around it that needs to be changed. Our society doesn't build for it. However, what the way that they spend the time, those 10 hours a day, inside this facility is something that can be changed, especially now that you have AI. And when we say AI, again, what do you mean by that, right? Because there's a lot. Um, and maybe we can change the way that kids learn today, right? So take it from here. What do you think can be done based on your knowledge, based on, by the way, we haven't talked yet about your relationship with school that you know well from your other role. Um, what do you think is feasible? Just not just visionary, but also feasible that they can implement within, I don't know, next year or this year.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, if we look in, what if we were to take the best parts of each of those forks of education? So from the Greeks, we take this element of deep discussion, deep dialogue, debate, right? Exploration. And so like a project I'm working on in that domain is called Debate Hub, right? A way to debate with AI, build your skills of debate, see how to build arguments, see where your arguments break down. I think the world needs a lot more of that right now because debate, even at our highest level, is like maximum cringe, right? So then how about from the Romans? Let's still incorporate merit. Let's still incorporate the ability that leaders should rise, people should be able to elevate. We're not going to make everybody entirely uniform. We actually do want to have the standouts and the geniuses and the people that can inspire and lead and grow. We don't want to call all of that like racist and level the playing field and saying like, oh, if everybody doesn't get the exact same outcome, something's broken. We want to give everybody the same opportunity. So that's the debate between equality and equity. Now, equality is an American value. Equity is a woke value. These to me are not like compatible. And then from the British, let's do some sorting, some indexing, find out who's good at what, right? And help them navigate within that. So all of this can happen within schools. And then with the American system, of course, the equality. Let's make it open to everyone. It's not just to the upper tier of society. It's open to everyone. We want to limit wasted human potential. So we want everyone to have an opportunity at a great education. But what should that education look like? I think we can take the best elements of each of those, and AI can facilitate each of those. AI can facilitate the building of debate and the skills and the mediation and the moderation, and it can kind of play like a neutral third party and help these ideas develop. Right now, we don't have that in schools. They got taken over by certain ideologies, and they've created a tremendous amount of division. There's a kind of a craziness that's happened, and that does not make people smarter. It makes them imbalanced. And then we had the Romans with the merit, like, yes, there should be tests, there should be competitions. You should really kind of measure yourself against other people so that you have a realistic sense of where are you, where do you fit, and you're inspired to reach towards higher areas. And you can also pull other people up because you have something to pass along. And then from the British, I have Compart, which I'm building, which is a very deep indexing system to really understand individuals very, very deeply on multiple divisions as well as networks of people. And that's one of my real areas of interest. Maybe because I trace maybe that DNA is still operating from me, and that's why I'm so passionate about organizing, and I'm so good at organizing and indexing and seeing where things fit and creating maps of the world and maps of meaning and so on. The British were very good at that. And then the American piece, that really is like part of the American promise, the dream. Everybody's got a shot here, right? We're including everybody in this opportunity. So AI at that level can reduce the barriers to entry. AI um, should be able to bring costs down, especially if we get excess bureaucracy out of the way. If we turn that chart around, then AI could actually make incredible education, highly effective, very personalized, available at a super cheap cost. I've run numbers on this, and I think it's well within range to be able to run this type of education for more like $100 per month per student, not 25,000 per year.
Absolutely. Yeah, you know, you you, you describe, your thought and you lay down the principle, and my mind going like, oh, we can do this, we can do that, right? And 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 that leads me to another question. And before we change subject, so let me try to explain what I heard from you. All right. What you're saying is that we can use AI technology in a sense that AI can be a main actor during class time. And we can now have, let's say, like I mentioned before, not one modality of how to present data, right? We can have now, I don't know, 5, 6, whatever. And then we can split the kids into those group. Oh, you more, what suits you better is this way, and what suits you better is this way. And now, instead of certified teachers to be able to answer and address those different methods of teaching, right? Because it's expensive, it's time's consuming, right?
And they can't do it. They can't do a 1 to 30.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So it might sound what I'm gonna say a little bit creepy, but then there is a but. But it's, think of a class where some type of AI powered machine, all right, it could be something that look like a humanoid, it could be a screen TV or something, but it's powered by AI, and it's AI that is configured, uh actually run the class, all right, in this method, all right? Whether, like you said, maybe it's a debate, all right? Maybe the kids debate on a subject that they need to learn, and there is a fact checker AI, and there is AI that makes sure that each one has the opportunity to, because we know it, those things, the technology exists today, right? It's not that you can configure an agent, AI agent, like I'm talking to ChatGPT every day, like talking voice. So okay, so I'm just saying we can do that, right? It sounds maybe a little bit creepy, but then here's my question. If we're gonna employ and adapt to this more and more, what is the new role of the teacher?
Well, I think I like that model that I've seen where it's shifting over to they're the guides, they're the cheerleaders, they're the coaches. They are helping to facilitate connections within the community, business partnerships, volunteer opportunities. So humans are still very much needed for this thing called human coordination. We're still very much needed for warmth and intimacy and friendships and mentorships and all types of relationships. So I think that is a win-win-win across the board. It costs the public less. The student is having an amazing experience of learning and school. And the results are better, again, feeding back into the collective benefit. And the teacher is having a much better experience. And they're watching truly like young people come to life, feeling like they're feeling young again every year because they're filled up with this energy of like inspired youth rather than cynical youth, rather than depressed youth, rather than suicidal youth, rather than violent youth, right? So um I don't see a lot of downside in terms of that transition from the, I mean, make an argument for it. Now everyone wants to say like, you know, the value of the teacher. Teachers are undervalued. I th- I don't know if I would quite call it that same way. I would say it's just the job is a grind. They've chosen to be in that position. Um, they're humans doing a job in kind of a machine. Let's let that sort of expire, and let's move to the next mode here that's actually better for them, better for the whole, and better for the learner.
Yeah, yeah. As the son of two teachers, both my parents were teachers. Um, I can definitely see that my the successful students of my parents, and both of them taught 10,000s of students during their career. But the one who stand out were the one that the method of the way that I just say it because I know it from firsthand. The way that they use to teach was a method that worked for this student, right? And then they become very successful in life, because we keep hearing from them, hey, I accomplished this and accomplished that, and, right? And me as a kid, seeing this when growing up, and then you think to yourself, how come not everyone? It's the same. My mom was a math teacher, and she taught the same right material to everyone. So how come not everyone's successful? Or at least to a certain degree. And I'm thinking, if there was someone who needed more repetition, let's say, of solving math, uh, now with AI, so back in those days, my mom has to, when she finished her work, right, she came back home to take care of us. But then, if a student needs more repetition, let's just say, you can have this AI today, right, that will be customized to his level and will help him to get up to speed. This is
Right.
a very simplified example,
Yeah.
but I can definitely see what you're saying in terms of how it can help. Um, Very interesting. I wonder if you are if the school that you mentioned, the one in Texas, if they already utilizing this
Yeah, yeah. That's
or
the that's how it goes. So they're like in their little pods. They get 2 hours. They've got the iPad. They're plugged in. It's either text, it's conversational, it's visual according to the student's needs, and it's just helping them find those bottlenecks, work through it, and giving them context that's already related to their interests. So it's like if you had your sort of perfect teacher for the standards, and then they're done with it. Now they've had enough screen time. Now it's time to interact with the humans again, their peers, their guides around the things that are really like important for their life. How do they think about and manage money? How do they think about and manage, their nutrition and their fitness and
exact
relationships and communication? And then what are they into? What do they want to build? What do they want to give back? So show me the downside and switching over to this, and I'm all ears. But to me, that is a it's not even 100,000x better. It's just a whole other world.
Yes, I agree. And I think the ultimate proof in my mind is the fact that those kids petition for, hey, we don't want summer break.
That's for me
We
too.
right?
For me too. It's like
We
the
like
first.
it so much here. We fulfilled, we feel we satisfied. We feel that we are growing in by doing, right? So we don't want to sit home, I don't know how many, weeks and wait until it starts again, which is amazing,
Yeah,
and
say you're in love and someone tells you, "Oh, you get
yeah,
to have a 3 month break from your lover." You're like, crushed. Or
exactly.
you got some project that you're deep into or some sport and like that, and someone's like, "Oh, we're gonna take that away for 3 months." You're like, no. But if it's a prison sentence and then you get 3 months out of prison, well, now it makes sense.
Beautiful. So let's dive in a little bit for some maybe less sophisticated advanced topics. And again, from your experience, let's talk about how AI can help schools these days with operation, as an example, right? So now it's not so much inspiring, like working with kids. Now it's the back end side. What do you see there? It's running a school is like running a business, but it's for right.
It's kind of like if you go to the doctor and the doctor says, tell me where it hurts, and then prescribes some medicine or some surgery, or if it was actually a healthcare system and not just a disease management system, they might also recommend some changes in your diet and your lifestyle and so on, and address the root causes. And as medicine progresses, the tools and recommendations and the accuracy of diagnosis all increase, right? So that's happening in medicine. Now, if you go to a doctor, different options are on the table that may not have been there 10 years ago, and certainly not 20 years ago, and so on, certainly not 100 years ago. So it's the same thing with operations. It's the same thing with, curriculum. It's the same thing with class management, studying kids' emotional health. All of those is like going to the doctor, tell me where it hurts. And now we have new medicines, we have new tools available. And so what is AI doing? AI is bringing down cost, increasing speed, increasing customization. In a way, you could say these are all three things happening in medicine as well. And increasing creativity. You can think about new solutions that you couldn't really think about that before. So what does that do? That all takes off what I would call potentially of a person's role, some of their C work, some of the low skill, soul crushing, monotonous stuff. It at least moves them up to their B work, where it's a little higher skill. Maybe they would need to delegate. Maybe they do need more training, but it's coming for that B work as well if it's not already there. What does that leave? It leaves that person's A work. What's the highest value of that person in their role? Where do they deliver the most value to the team, to the enterprise, to the customer, in this case, the learner? And so that is like one framework to think about it. Let's find where the pain is. Let's remove the pain. Let's free people up from their C and B work so that they can really be giving sort of their maximum value contribution. Hopefully that also aligns with the thing that they most enjoy doing and putting forth. So that to some degree work maybe feels less like a grind and depleting and more like this is the right place for me. This is something I can actually feed some purpose into, and maybe they're even energized, even inspired at the end of the day to come back and keep doing it versus, waiting for that vacation just as much as the kids are.
Great. You made me think about operating for my own business, operating in two modes. One mode, and I'm gonna ask your permission to use this example.
Mm-hmm.
One mode is the doctor mode. Tell me where it's hurt, and let me suggest and prescribe you a medicine. I like that a lot. And the other is, someone might say, dude, I'm healthy. I don't have any pains. I'm good. And then I'm like, okay, so now it's let's call it the coach mode. All right, you want to, let's say you go to the gym, right? You want to get stronger, bigger, whatever, right? Let me help you and show you ways in my world that AI can help you, right, grow. So first, let's make sure that you're healthy. And if there's any pain, let's solve it. So for example, right? Um, um, Taking calls from customers. I'm having a big challenge with that, right? And you probably have seen it before, right? Either my receptionist is they keep changing, I have a retention, not high retention, or maybe they don't doing enough good job of getting the essence of the call and creating some tickets or something, whatever the case might be. These days there are amazing AI receptionists, really amazing, that you can't even sometimes tell that you're talking to an AI. I mean, of course, you still get, but listen, within
Yes,
few
and
months,
outbound. Yeah.
yeah, you won't be able to. And they're doing an amazing job understanding, at least either even providing solution, or at least, okay, let me take the information and and escalate it. So okay, that's the pain, right? I have a medicine, I have a solution for it. Or if you're telling me, no, everything is perfect, it's running smoothly, I'm okay. Do you want to grow? Right? Maybe you want more customers. We have, as an example of AI, and again, because we're talking about operation now, there are AI agents that manage campaigns, that manage customer leads, right? That can get you more leads while you focusing on the job, and and you don't need to deal with all the challenges that you have doing it the old way, right? And you can always improve it and customize it for better result. You see what works, you increase it. What doesn't work, you throw it away, right? And AI doesn't complain, you know. So that was, this whole conversation was even just for. I mean, we learned a lot here, and we are almost getting close to the top of the hour. And I knew this conversation with you, you never know how it's going to go, and it can go a thousand directions. So just for that, I want to thank you. But before I, l- you know, before we end this call, I want to one more thing to do with you. Um, because I have some prior knowledge talking with you, and I was exposed to some of the other things that you do. I'm gonna let you choose one subject, all right, out of all the things that you do, um, that you might want to convey a message, because you are working on activities that have value to human beings, that have value to society, all right? It's not just business. You do business, but you also um, have a very inspiring missions and visions. And I let you choose one of them, and you choose whatever you want to convey, any kind of message about future of society and what can be done better. Does that make sense?
It
Did
does.
I?
What I'm going to do with your suggestion here is I'm gonna tag off the last thing we were saying and bring one more concept, and then from that I'll just kind of list a whole bunch of things I'm involved in, so that at any point that people think they could get some value from any point of those things, they'll have an entry. All right.
Sure.
So the main idea you were talking about, we were talking about, okay, you go to the doctor when something hurts, but even if you go to a coach because like you want to get more fit or you want to meet another tier, that still is a form of dissatisfaction.
Yes.
And that's an interesting understanding that the dissatisfaction is necessary to change priorities, to change behavior, and so on. So even if somebody's body is in great health, they may be dissatisfied at their level of competition. They want to be able to run that marathon, or they want to be able to do their event faster, or they want to be able to create something in a new way, or they want to be able to feel something in a new way, right? Or like the relationship has been fine, but maybe it's kind of falling asleep, or whatever it is. There's some dissatisfaction. So it may not be acute pain, but there is something there where people feel they're reaching for something more. And that's just an important understanding that if your baseline is I'm fine, everything's good, then you're not necessarily at a place where you're looking for something new to enter. There's no space for something new to come in. But if there's some dissatisfaction, if there's a question, if there's something opening, then there is. Now there's a room, now there's an opportunity. So, whoever ends up listening to this, they can kind of reflect on that. And sometimes that actually is the case. There is something brewing there, but there might be some other part that is scared of that, is keeping it at bay and not looking at it simply because it seems like it might be disruptive. It'll be out of control. They don't know what doors might open and where it will head. And there's a cost to that too. The cost is you get to have the control, but you lose some life. So the first is kind of being able to accurately assess some level of honesty, like, is there something I'm still hungering for? Or am I truly, yeah, I'm just not looking for anything. And that's okay too, because life is not like a static. You'll have times where these things open. And when that opening comes, there might be some things that come with it. There might be some fear. There might be some feeling of like a loss of control. And that could be interesting as well. So what are the things I'm doing and what are the ways people can plug in and learn more? I'm relaunching jacobgriscom.com. That's like a personal place where all of the different threads of interest find their way in there. So some things I'm doing there. I have a lot of poetry I've written in the past that I recorded as like raps on Instagram, and now I'm generating like AI music from it. I've got my work nodes. So I've got R&B Communications, which is rb-com.com. That's all of our custom software building that we do for companies, mainly charter schools and web design and all that stuff. We've got um, Compart, which is the most elegant, beautiful software that I've ever seen. I'm in go to production while I'm here. So the goal is that will be launched soon. The domain for that will be compart.network. But it's not live there yet. And the new jacobgriscom.com is not live yet as well, but it will be by the end of the month. An old one is there right now. I'm, let's call it an ambassador for Servants and Heroes, the School for Servants and Heroes, which is from my teacher, Justin J. Gold, in the Sierra Nevadas, the foothills of Northern California, and a real master of awareness who the crossing of with is an indescribable blessing, who has opened up tremendous domains of exploration for me and freed me up from immense burdens and sufferings that many people carry around, has given me the happy burden to be as much of a servant and service to other people as I can as I cross paths with them and are magnetized to anything I'm doing. I have on there an old book I wrote called Grow Your Ayurvedic Business for the Ayurveda world, that's like basically a practice management system for people practicing that and people in any sort of health discipline where they want to go their own and learn like a good coaching model and a sustainable business model. That's on there. I have the Nevada County Business Network that I started, which is a collection of business owners that generate referrals and meetups and sort of build community around the common tongue of supporting local businesses in Nevada County. Various other things will find their ways to that work node. We talked about the music. I have an area that's called Now, which is just whatever I'm kind of working on, thinking about metaphors I'm exploring to understand life and different elements. You'll notice like I do a lot of crossovers. I understand one domain and try to like understand another. That's also something I've learned both from Justin as well as from Herman Hesse with his book Magister Ludi, The Glass Bead Game, and other like A-list media around that. There's a section called Awareness Library where I'm kind of documenting the approaches to awareness, some tools, some applied perspectives, and then I just have stories in there too, some cool stories. How did I get this other name, Nobody? How did I, encounters that I've had with interesting experiences with numbers and times and places and stuff. So just kind of all over the place, interesting stuff. And that'll be a good launch pad to all of that. But you can also explore each of those individually through a Google search or looking it up and all the rest of that. Debate Hub that I mentioned, that should be on there at some point as well. We want to elevate debate. We want to use AI to teach debate skills and bring back debate as a really important medium for people being able to assess where they are with their understanding of subjects. How can they create arguments? Where do things fall apart? Could we even use that to create leverage on people in elected positions and stuff to like, hey, if you want that position, you should kind of be able to have a cohesive argument around the core topics that affect people and like that. So these are all things that kind of have me captured right now and then I'm feeding into and like that.
Jacob Grisham, you said all over the place, and I would actually suggest the new Renaissance man, a modern Renaissance man. It's not
Something
just
like
all over the place. You are, you know, if anyone who heard that description of all your activities, if I must say, I probably familiar with 60% of those activities, which I think is not too bad, because like Ayurveda is completely different than the other activities that you do is on a different dimension, I would even say. So I would call it a true modern Renaissance man. It was a pleasure speaking with you. We learned a lot about many subjects, and I would be happy to host you again when all those, or at least one of the activities is ready,
Yeah,
and
we
you
can
can share with us.
dive on any one of them and so on. Yeah.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So I want to thank you for the time. I hope I see you again, maybe even this year, right? Thank you.
If AI feels overwhelming, you're not behind. You're just busy running a business. New tools pop up every week, and no one has time to figure out what actually works. At Lion Edge AI, we take AI off your plate so you can focus on running your business. We review your setup, choose the right tools, and run AI systems across sales, customer support, and operations. No noise, no learning curve. Lion Edge AI, your unfair advantage in the AI era.